Welcome back, friends, to another edition of In the Trenches. Before we get going on our 7 from 77, as we continue to progress through this offseason, the long, arduous offseason, but it is very eventful because of new coaching staff, new players, the transfer portal, all of that different stuff. I want to let you know what's going on with MGoBlue Podcasts, which we do every single time we join you. Continuing coverage of men's basketball, men's and women's Michigan basketball on Defend the Block. A lot of post-game editions there and a lot of fun times in both the men's and women's. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the program. Conquering Heroes will be returning, and the first edition will be with the women's softball coach, Bonnie Thole. She's going to join us this Thursday. So excited to get a chance to talk to her. It's hard to believe that baseball and softball season right around the corner, but since I have a softball player in my house, it just seems to never leave. So it is right around the corner. So if you're looking for some hope in the spring, pitchers and catchers mid-February, but Michigan softball and Michigan baseball are getting fired up right now. Brian Bush is the voice of Michigan basketball, and as you can see, if you're watching us, he is joined me on the screen. Mr. Bush, how are you doing?
I'm great. Fortunately, Michigan softball does not open their season at home, but I did want to ask you a question about that. And on the video side, we'll talk Michigan hoops coming up here on the video-only portion, because if you're listening to this on the audio side, Michigan, Indiana already happened. So, but I want to ask you this very simple question, John. Is the weather this week cold?
It's chilly. I wouldn't call it cold. We're still above zero.
Not freezing, correct?
No, it's well, I mean, it is below freezing, but
But I'm saying for you, are you cold when you walk outside? I think it's gonna be -10 for a low on Friday night.
Well, okay, so Friday, -10. All right, now you're starting to get cold. Now you start to consider putting a jacket on. Gloves are still for Doug Harsh receivers, kickers,
and Brian Bush. I mean,
and Brian Bush. That's, your little bonnets that you wear to cover your ears. They never looked good on me, and it kind of feels soft wearing one. So it doesn't require that, but I do believe -10. You start to consider a jacket, something more than a flannel. Right now, I'm somewhat opposed to jackets, just because. Why do I go from my truck to inside, whether it's the studio or Schembechler Hall? I'm outside for a total of 30 seconds. I don't really need one to make it that far outside in the cold.
No, that totally makes sense. If you're actually out for a little bit longer than that, our official podcast stance, as the head producer, I'm going to say, please wear coats. Don't use this as your guiding light for all things winter.
It depends if you want to be a tough individual. If you want to wake up in the morning and you just exude toughness, then go out there. You don't need your jacket. You don't need gloves. Unless you're a mailman or you're working outside all day long, it's okay. It is okay to be a tough guy, tough lady, whatever you are, just own it. That's what I'm telling you. So yes, I am. If you're under the age of 16, do what your parents tell you to do. After that, make your own decisions. Life choices.
John Jansen's opinions do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Learfield, the University of Michigan, or the athletic department.
Never have.
No.
It feels like we ought to start with that disclaimer instead of telling what's going on at MGoBlue Podcast. We should have that little disclaimer.
I think that's why they said we should put MGoBlue Podcast with John Jansen. It's basically like, hey, just as a framework, this is talking about Michigan sports, but
yeah,
John
Jansen's got to own it.
Exactly. All right. Number 1 on our 7 from 77. Let's talk about some more roster additions for Michigan football. Now, last week, if you joined us, you heard about some of the newer ones. The edge, John Henry Daly. That still probably is one of, if not the biggest additions to this roster. Talked about the wide receivers, Jamie French and J.J. Buchanan, who he could be some tight end, some receiver, bigger bodied guy. Excited about him. 2 Moa brothers coming to Ann Arbor. Isaiah is a linebacker, started his career at BYU, played last year up in East Lansing. His brother is Celesi. He was briefly at Utah. He's a true freshman coming in, but he decided to follow Kyle Whittingham to Ann Arbor. Celesi, a 4-star top player out of Utah in this pass recruiting class. played wide receiver and safety in high school, so he'll be someone to monitor during spring ball. Other notable additions, Smith Snowden, really good Utah transfer in addition to the secondary. He was a second teamer in the Big 12 last year. Chris Bracey is a former Memphis Tiger. He's a solid secondary addition. Those aren't the only ones, but probably of the last week, the biggest additions. Thoughts on some of those guys? Anything else that stood out about Michigan still churning the portal? The ability to enter the portal is closed, but obviously there are still plenty of players who are trying to find their homes.
Yeah, and so I need to go through the exercise now of putting down my depth chart of who is where, who is back. And there's a very good chance that I mentioned somebody today that has entered the portal that I didn't even know entered the portal. So, another disclaimer involved. We're full of disclaimers today. But I think that they've done a nice job of addressing some needs. There's still some that need to be addressed in regards to depth on both of the offensive and defensive line. As you mentioned, you could still take some guys out of the portal. Nobody new can enter it, which is nice. It kind of feels like, hey, the gas is, or the gas pedal is eased up a little bit. And when you're talking about the Moa brothers, obviously the one that's coming in regards to could be a receiver, could be a defensive back, go even before the transfer portal open. What were some of the areas that we had talked about needing to address in the transfer portal? One of them was receiver. And so, you love to have those guys come in that have had experience on both sides of the ball, guys that are just pure athletes. Mikey Samra came in. He was a receiver for a couple of years, switched over the defensive side and had some epic moments. Not just in the Ohio State game, but in terms of being a captain and doing everything that we know he accomplished here. And he's having a great career right now with the Washington Commanders as a defensive back. So you love to have those guys come in that are, position flexible in regards to which side of the ball are they going to best fit in this year? Where are they going to best fit in next year? And obviously the coaching staff has to take into consideration what is best for the individual as well for their prospects outside when they leave Michigan. Hopefully it's for the NFL and not for the portal. So I like some of the additions. I still think depth, you can never have too much depth or too much depth of talent on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And that's where I think you're going to start to see some more, some more bodies taken out of the portal.
Number 2 on our 7 from 77 talked about the LFG 147s that we've seen popping up on social media over the last few weeks. There were a lot of defensive returns announced after last week when we talked, a lot of offensive returns. Dom Nichols, Nate Marshall, Shamari Earls, Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, Mason Curtis, Trey Pierce. His brother Christian also transferred in from Western Illinois. Also, a potential 3-time captain in Rod Moore back for one more go-around. Takeaways on some of those big additions where Michigan got some help in the portal in the secondary. They're also getting some big-time returns in a that might have been the most unsettled group from a transfer portal standpoint in what, 2.5 weeks ago in that time frame. But some of those additions, plus Curtis and Moore, that's definitely good news for Michigan.
Yeah, and I like the fact that defensive front, you're getting Trey Pierce back, you're getting Dom Nichols, Nate Marshall, a couple of guys that really started to come on at the end of last year, got some more opportunity. And I do believe that one of the questions I get asked all the time is, talk about the offensive line. Shocker there. But what's happening at the edge position? And we've already talked about John Henry Daly coming in and being a part of that equation. But you've got to have a number of guys that you can rotate in and through there. So getting those guys back, I think was a huge win. And we all know the losses that we took at the linebacker position. Some guys moving on to the NFL draft, other guys retiring, other guys moving on to a different school. So getting Owusu-Boateng back, I think was great. We saw him when that position got banged up, and the two positions that we felt, or at least I felt last year that were the deepest were the tight end position and the linebacker position. So you lose your top 4 linebackers, but you've already got guys that have experience that can step in there in a new defense, and we'll see how they fit in with this new defense. We'll talk more about that when I get a chance to see them at spring ball, offensive scheme, defensive scheme. But it's nice to have him back.
Number 3 on our 7 from 77. One other name that did not portal. We learned another freshman All-American honor for Andrew Marsh, wide receiver, the Football Writers Association of America, the most recent one since we last talked. Now, I haven't seen the LFG 147 post, but we knew from the start, and again, this isn't some breaking football analysis, but Kyle Whittingham, I think that was the first player he mentioned when we had him on the air at the Citrus Bowl. Getting him back, his upside, I think he and Bryce Underwood were probably the top 2 guys. And with how Andrew Marsh flashed, he might have been the number 1 guy for Michigan to try to focus on. And it's great to see that, from all accounts, good to go for a sophomore season in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, and what did we hear about was the first conversation he had was a 45-minute conversation with Bryce Underwood. What do you want to make sure your quarterback has? A receiver that he is comfortable with. They came in together. They're growing together. And I'm really excited about, having him back. And I kind of saved my opinion on the whole 147 LFG until we talked about Andrew Marsh. I love the way that he is handling this. Didn't enter the portal. And a lot of that was because, his situation and his, whether you want to talk about his contract, whether you want to talk about, the coaches being able to address him before the portal even opened up, that may be why he never entered the portal. I don't know the reason, but is the whole posting of I'm back, even though I was on the roster last year and I brought myself out of the portal, or even if I didn't enter the portal, but I'm here and I'm staying. Is that the new, we used to see it with high school seniors, picking the ball cap. It seems like that's sort of faded away. And now it's, hey, what school am I going to? And if I'm returning to the same one, I need to make some grand announcement that I'm back. Hey, Michigan fans, I'm back. I love the way that Andrew Marsh has handled this entire situation. He was here. He didn't enter the portal. So there's no reason to celebrate the fact that he's back other than the fans can celebrate that he never entered the portal. He's a part of the equation. I'm not a huge fan of the social media. I'm announcing I'm back at the same school that I was just at. So feather in the cap for Andrew Marsh of how he's handled this entire thing, and a feather in the cap for the coaching staff of identifying him. It didn't take a whole lot of identification, but to make sure that your quarterback's here, your number 1 target and receiver is here, and the fact that they have made it an emphasis to go out there and get all those LFG 147s on the offensive line back.
Could you imagine if, you're in that interview and the first thing a prospective coach says is, I'll tell you guys, that Andrew Marsh guy, I think he's pretty good.
Yeah. Masters of the obvious.
That's right. Exactly. I'm just saying. Also, the offensive line's important. There we go.
Yes.
There we go. All right. The college football season might be over, but that does mean that college baseball is quickly approaching. And John, Michigan is preparing for 2 huge events next month.
That's right, Brian. I got a surprise for you as well, because Michigan will participate in the college baseball series in both surprise Arizona from February 13 to 16. Worked on that one all night. And Arlington, Texas, at the home of the Texas Rangers. From February 20 to 22, the Wolverines will get some early season tests from several nationally ranked teams. Become a college football or college baseball. Now, I got to make that transition too. Become a college baseball VIP with home plate reserved tickets. This premium offering features reserved seating from behind home plate. That's why it's called home plate reserved tickets. Reserved parking, early entry, and a souvenir hat and more. Get your Block M hat. We all love those. Home plate reserved and general admission tickets are on sale now at collegebaseballseries.com.
And we will have Tracy Smith, head coach of Michigan baseball, on Conquering Heroes coming up in a few weeks. Looking forward to that, the first Thursday of February, to talk about that and more for an exciting season of Michigan baseball. You see the URL below, collegebaseballseries.com. All right, number 4 on our 7.
Love me ad-libbing the reads that you have so precisely crafted.
Again, John, that's the disclaimer. That's the twist. If you're going in the trenches with John Jansen,
yes,
the trenches is offensive line, and also there are some trenches that John Jansen will bring about. It is quite all right. I'm just glad.
Surprise
Surprise thing. That I know that at least once you've read the rundown. That's helpful. We have, if I ever question, you can
Do
go
you
back.
think that I don't do my homework? This is offensive.
I know you. Hey, this time of year, I know you do. When we're really busy in the October, November months, I just, sometimes you answered question 4 during question 3.
Well, I know because I pre-read and now it's in my mind and I can't get it out. And my memory only goes back about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So at that point, I'm like, wait, am I answering this now? But I did today when I didn't answer the Andrew Marsh question, number 4 at number 3. You're welcome.
Look
Or 3 at 2, whatever it was.
Math, don't worry about it. Counting, irrelevant. Planning ahead, John Jansen.
Yep.
All right, something we didn't get to last week, the coaching staff complexion. We'll start with the offensive side of the ball. Jason Beck joined Kyle Whittingham on the move to Ann Arbor as the offensive coordinator. Last year, Utah, top 5 in a bunch of categories offensively: rushing offense, total offense, scoring offense, fewest interceptions. So your thoughts on Jason Beck as OC, and also an offensive staff that its carryover is running backs coach Tony Alford, who obviously I think a lot of people were hoping for that. And it's good to see Kyle Whittingham bring Coach Alford back.
Yeah. And what I think probably the one thing I like the most is fewest interceptions, because to me that signifies that obviously they're a disciplined team and it's receivers being where they're supposed to be. It's offensive line protecting the quarterback, and obviously the decisions that the quarterback is making. It's the technique of the quarterback, the rhythm of the quarterback. All of those different things lead into fewest interceptions. And then when you look at rushing offense, total offense, scoring offense, those are great indicators of what this offense should look like. But this is a completely different team, completely different skill set. Now, we know the Michigan identity is going to be physical, run the ball. And I love the fact that that same identity is coming in. But all of those things were accomplished in the Big 12. The Big 10 is a little bit different. How's the coaching staff going to be able to adjust to some of the different defenses? And it's not that they don't play good football. It's just not, top to bottom as difficult as it is in the Big 10. So, when you look at Jordan Marshall and incoming freshman Savion Hyder, when you look at this offensive line and they've added some components to it, some have left. And, what does it look like? How are they better next year? And that's why I go to fewest interceptions. To me, that shows Jason Beck has an attention to detail. And if they've brought in all these other coaches in regards to Jim Harding on the offensive line, Coy Detmer as a quarterback coach, keeping Coach Alford, like you understand, Coach Simon as a wide receiver coach, there is clearly from top down an attention to detail. And I'm really excited about that.
How about the defensive side? Number 5 on our 7 from 77, Jay Hill. He also comes from the state of Utah, but not from the Utes. He was the defensive coordinator at Utah's biggest rival, BYU, over the last 3 seasons. And from a carryover standpoint, defensive line coach Lou Esposito was the selection there. Thoughts on how the defensive staff came to be?
Well, so we talked about BYU and Texas Tech throughout the course of the last football season. And when I got a chance to look at BYU in those games, as well as some of the other games leading up to it, for us to be able to do our preparation, read the script, and understand what we're going to be talking about, and making sure that I'm prepared to talk to Brian Bush, is the fact that they are a physical style of defense, and they have identified some areas that need to be improved upon, or at least need to add, talent to. John Henry Daly. Obviously, they went out and got him, and that's a Coach Whittingham, add, because he coached him for 2 years at Utah. But when we talked to Wink last year, the last year's defensive coordinator, it was the youth in the secondary. And again, when you think about Jay Hill and what he did or how he operated, it was again a disciplined defense. Now you put that with the talent that he is inheriting, some of the talent that they're bringing in, and some of the talent that is coming that was already committed in the recruiting class. I like the fact that I believe this is going to be a disciplined defense. They're not going to beat themselves. They're going to be where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there. but it's also going to be an aggressive style up front. And as I mentioned earlier, I'll get a better sense of what that scheme looks like when we get into spring ball and how they're going to be utilizing linebackers. Is it going to, how often are they going to go over under? What looks are they going to be looking at? Who are they going to be having? Is John Henry Daly going to be one of those guys like we saw Hutch do that goes side to side, or does he just have one side that he likes to play on, or that they want to utilize him on because they've got Dom or they got Trey or they've got other guys on the other side? So in regards to the scheme, that to me is TBD, because I think any good coaching staff, offense, defense, and special teams, and we'll talk about Kerry Combs here in a moment. Again, a little preparation. You have to adjust your coaching style and your philosophy. You have what you believe in, and that's going to be the basis of your defense, your offense, your special teams. But you also have to mold that to the players that you're inheriting in a new program, the players that are going to be coming in, and how do they fit in with those guys. So a lot of that is still TBD.
Number 6 on our 7 from 77, you mentioned it, special teams coordinator Kerry Combs. Talk about a fascinating, challenging, 6-7 weeks for him. He was the last signing or last decision before Sharon Moore's firing, but he remains on staff. He'll lead the special teams. And I mean, gosh, it's tough to argue against the fact that Michigan had its best special teams performance when probably it was at its most chaotic few weeks, which you would assume that might trickle down to special teams the most. So who knows? I don't want to lead too much into bowl reaction, but if there's anywhere you can be optimistic about, it's what Kerry Combs did with Michigan special teams on short notice with a bunch of clouds all over the place.
Yeah, and I think it's probably, if you're talking about being a special teams coordinator and you come in and in 3 weeks, you've got to figure out who's going to be on punt return, punt, who's going to be on kickoff return, all of those different things. Now, PAT field goal, that there's not a lot of science that goes into that, but in regards to the return games, with guys opting out of the game, guys entering the portal, guys say, hey, I'm opting out because I'm going to the NFL draft. Now, all of a sudden, you've got to look at film and you've got to talk to your other assistants and say, okay, well, who am I going to put as a gunner over here because I just lost the last one? Or maybe guys aren't getting the job done as you watch film throughout the course of those 12 games. And then you've got to identify talent. And then once you identify your personnel, you've got to be able to put schemes in place. And we have heard about Andrew Marsh, and we saw him early in the season. I know there was a fumble early on, but he is a young player. We saw him as a receiver, but as a return guy, like, we kept hearing how dynamic he could be, but he never really got the chance. Then we got a chance to see it in the bowl game. So I do think there was a huge impact by Coach Combs. I love it that they're bringing in Garrett Clausen as an assistant special teams coach, because there's so much that goes into special teams. And so my hat's off to him for being able to put together a scheme that gave Michigan a chance, making special teams a weapon again. I don't think I need a hat that says that. That's probably too many letters. But making special teams great again for the Wolverines, making them a weapon. I think.
Well, first off, you are not that passionate about special teams.
No, I'm not. But here's what I do like is the fact that special teams is kind of one of those necessary evils, right? And we knew that special teams, that wasn't.
This was not on the rundown, by the way, everybody. This is not.
It wasn't a strength. It was clear it wasn't a strength. So what do? They go in the portal. They get a punter. They go in the portal because Dom Zavada is out of eligibility, and they get a kicker. They get another long snapper. They have addressed identifying, and again, it's like on offense saying that Andrew Marsh, yeah, we want to keep him. Duh. It's the same thing on special teams. We need to be better at punting the football. We need to be better at when we're in field goal range. So they've gone out and they've addressed it. Now, what does that look like when it ultimately comes? When you put total leather in a legitimate sense of the word on special teams, what does that look like next year? We'll find out more in the spring.
And certainly Michigan adding multiple specialists, multiple long snappers. So there is a desire to get this better, and we'll see how it all comes together. But if Michigan made the strides it did in 3 weeks, certainly like the chances they can make in 8-9 months. All right, number 7 on our 7 from 77. We'll talk a little bit about the national championship game. And first off, a big thank you to our friends at Modelo. They were with us all season here on In the Trenches. Modelo is the official beer sponsor of the college football playoff, which came to an end on Monday. Reward your full-time fandom with an ice-cold Modelo. You just need to put it outside for like 8 minutes, and it'll be ice cold. So that's very positive. We will put the perspective and go a little more in-depth on the video-only side. Audio only, we got Mel Owens and Peg Munson coming up from the Golden Bachelor. Mel, former Wolverine. But just an overview of what you saw. Indiana 27, Miami 21.
I thought pretty much what I believed was going to happen when we went into that game. It was a veteran Indiana team, a team that is, average age is near 24 and very patient, very disciplined, not trying to do too much early on. And it's going down there. I know they wanted to come away with more than a field goal on that drive, but hey, it didn't happen. They took their chances later on when there was a 4th and 6, they got to convert a first down, 4th and 5. And what are you going to do at that point other than say, hey, you're a Heisman Trophy winner. We're going to put the ball in your hands. Go make a play, and he scores on 4th and 5 to really seal the game. So, my hats off to Fernando Mendoza, obviously Kirk Cignetti, for what they've been able to do in Bloomington. And if you look at Mendoza's stats, nothing's going to blow your socks off. He was 16 to 20 of 27, 186 yards, but no interceptions. And I know he wanted to throw a touchdown, and the receivers were real prolific throughout the course of the regular season and the playoffs, but it was a team. He wasn't going to go out there and press for something. And there were, in that opening quarter, I think it was the first quarter, might have been the second quarter, the drive where he's just taking brutal shots from Miami.
See,
like if you ever question his toughness, like that question was answered in that national championship game.
No doubt. More to come on the video side. On the audio side, we will make our way over to the Golden Bachelor conversation. Mel Owens and Peg Munson sitting down with John Jansen. And again, here on the video side, we'll take your comments, your questions, your thoughts on the national championship game. We'll talk a little bit of Michigan basketball. We will have a really fun post-game stream when the Wolverines knock off Indiana tonight with former Wolverine Robbie Reed joining me. We'll have Kyle Church, Michigan assistant, come on, get his thoughts on the matchup. Hoping for that around 10:15, 10:30 tonight after hopefully another Michigan victory. Original Indy won because of their defense and zone coverage and few mistakes. Yeah, I mean, they just are a veteran team. That's why it was so surprising, John, that they made that offside or that false start or illegal formation, whatever the penalty was there on 2nd and 1, because that would have ended the game in all likelihood. A first down puts them likely to score. It's in a spot where Miami might have let them score to try to get the ball back in some way, shape, or form. And then Miami was driving. But outside of that, I mean, Indiana, they just don't make mistakes.
They don't make mistakes. And I mean, how many times in that broadcast did we hear about this behemoth offensive line for Miami and the undersized little guy from Bloomington? Like it was unbelievable. But the amount of times that I've been on here and I've talked about some of the struggles of the Michigan offensive line, the number one thing that offensive lines will struggle with is movement. And that's what Indiana did. They used their athleticism, and it wasn't because they were putting unbelievable pressure on Carson Beck. They only gave up 1 sack, but it was the uncertain looks that they had. They'd get to the line of scrimmage, and other than the 57-yard run by Mark Fletcher, they really held that rushing game for Miami in check with that big, tough, physical offensive line. They did it because they eliminated some of the double teams by moving that defensive front. I thought the linebackers for Indiana played at an extremely high level, and we talked about them a little bit last week leading into the game, how impactful those guys were going to be. And so, discipline on defense, and trusting the scheme, trusting your teammates. I thought we talk about team defense, talked about it a little bit this year with the Michigan team, and it was coming out of the USC game where you kind of felt like guys were trying to do too much. Guys were, hey, if we're not going to be able to do it as a team, I'm going to do it as an individual. That's not the way to stop offenses, especially in the Big Ten. But if you're talking about a national championship game, you've got to have a defense that trusts exactly what your teammate is doing. They're going to do their job. So I'm going to focus on what mine is, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And I thought they played extremely good team defense.
Concrete Jungle, IU running backs have extremely high motors. They had to, because it was not easy against that Miami defensive front. They were very, very solid. That was the fascinating matchup, was Indiana finding a way offensively against Miami. And I mean, the difference was the special teams punt return for a touchdown. I thought that might have been the death nail for Miami, yet here they are. They come back and they have the football driving down the field. John, from cut from a different cloth, what are your thoughts about 23 to 24-year-olds playing against 18 to 19-year-olds? The average age of players on Indiana's team is 23. Average age is 25 for the Packers. Is that true? I don't. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it is, and it's really close to 24 for Indiana. And I mean, I know that there's a big debate about the whole red shirt, and the coaches have voted that, hey, you can play 9 games versus just the 4. And I think we're eventually going to get to a 5-for-5 system. I have no problem. So I mean, if you're playing 5 years, you come in at 18, you're going to be playing when you're 23. And I think Kirk Cignetti has identified, he brought a bunch of guys from JMU, and he brought a bunch, obviously Fernando Mendoza was at Cal for the bulk of his career. He comes in as a senior. They have found, quote unquote, the new cheat code of being able to win at a high level and consistently throughout the course of the year. And that is not necessarily, you're always going to have recruiting classes and develop some of your own guys. But because the portal is there, you can go to, all these other schools. You can go to the MAC. You can go to the Sun Belt. You can go to these different leagues where they're developing players that maybe were under-recruited or were, 2- and 3-star guys. And now all of a sudden they're performing like 4- or 5-star guys. And you get them as juniors, seniors, 5th-year guys. There's a distinct advantage of having that experience, that maturation, not just emotionally, but physically. A 23-year-old playing against an 18 or 19-year-old, that's a huge gap.
Yeah, Concrete Jungle, they said it couldn't be done. Now he's done to let them enjoy their championship. I got no problem with them leveraging it. That's where we are. I do think we need to get to some sort of 5-for-5, but you are dealt the hand that you're dealt. And Kurt Cignetti, I think, might be the best in college football at taking that hand and maximizing it, right? I mean, he's been great with it, which is super impressive. A few other comments here. Dakota Kid, who I met in Eugene. He was out there for Michigan and Oregon. So good to meet Dakota Kid. Who doesn't live in the Dakotas anymore. But he's saying that the Moa brothers will be wearing gloves on this day. Yes, likely, as will I. Yeah. Patrick, you have yourself a good day as well. D Original saying, I think the return and punt returners will be a strength next season. I fully agree. I think that's
they have to be
100%. And on paper, the depth, the skill weapons, Andrew Marsh, yeah, there's optimism there.
Yeah, and it's when you're talking about the return game and having the freedom as a returner, that if it's, I talked about this, in regards to Texas, they were a very aggressive team in the return game. You watch them throughout the course of the year, and I know their top returner wasn't available for the game, but they were a team that would bring it out 3 or 4 yards deep from the end zone. And when you have a scheme in place and you have a returner like Andrew Marsh or whoever else they deem is going to be the guy that's going to be returning kicks for Michigan, then yeah, I think there's a huge advantage. Instead of just putting the ball down at the 25, of being able to get the ball out to the 30, 35, even the 40-yard line. Like, there is a tremendous advantage, but you've got to be able to have the scheme in place, but also give the confidence to the returner to make that decision in the moment.
Get a question from Basketball 2004. Thoughts on Pat Fitzgerald being the head coach of Michigan State? We talked about it a little bit, but now that we're going to start getting into some off-season discussions, and that will certainly be a fascinating one. Who'd have thunk in this time last year we'd be sitting here going, yep, can't wait for the first Michigan State duel between Kyle Whittingham and Pat Fitzgerald.
I think it's a tremendous hire. And I think anybody that's listened to this podcast or me talk about Big Ten football over the past decade or longer knows what I think about Pat Fitzgerald. Now, he's been out of the game for 3 years. Doesn't mean he hasn't been, as going to different programs and looking at how they're running things, keeping connections with assistant coaches, but he didn't really bring anybody with him because he's been out for 3 years. So for him, it's going to be a matter of that first staff is never as good as your second one. And so I think he's made some tremendous hires, at Michigan State, but he'll learn a lot this year. It's going to be a disciplined team. It's going to be a physical team. But I also look down the road, 2-3 years down the road, when he starts making adjustments to his staff and whoever that might be. That's where I'm really concerned about this rivalry, or I think excited about the rivalry, not concerned.
Yeah, listen, it's it's great to have some knocks on a rival when they're down, but we remember rivalry games for a long time when both teams are good.
Yeah, and that's when it's the most fun.
Yep, 100%. Here's a question. We'll talk about 2026 CFP because there's a deadline of Friday to potentially expand it. It was a deadline that was granted by ESPN, who owns the rights to this. And sorry, not sure why the timer's showing up like that. We'll throw this one up there. Why? I'm confused as to why the caption's going away. Sorry, that's a little behind the scenes thing that I was perplexed about. Anywho, my question is, does Miami's run this year make you more or less interested in expansion to the college football playoff from 12 and beyond?
Not particularly. I mean, if Notre Dame got in, what do you think they would have done? Would they have been out in the first round, maybe made it to the second round? I mean, who knows? I mean, more football, in my opinion, is always going to be fun. And if they're just going to keep expanding it, then why wait? I think the adjustment I would make, and I know, Brian, you probably will disagree. I know there's a lot of disagreement on this, but I want to see good football. I don't need to see a 45-point blowout. And we knew going in, Tulane, JMU, like that was going to happen. And I'm not sorry that, I don't think everybody deserves or belongs at the table. So I would like to see them stay at 12, but I would like them to just simply take the top 12 ranked teams. And if Tulane is good enough to be ranked in the top 12, then you earned a spot. If whoever is good enough to be ranked in the top 12, then you've earned a spot. I think that's ultimately what it should come down to.
I am more on board with that if we adjust how we determine those 12 teams and how we determine what the rankings look like. As we've talked about, if the ACC didn't screw up, we would have Notre Dame in and only Tulane in, and it would have been a lot cleaner and there would have been a gap and all that. I really like the 12-team model. I think they're going to screw it up and add to it because there's more inventory and games and all of that. We've gotten to a point where it is the only argument I think to 16 is that you eliminate the potential for a long layoff, but I'd rather fix that by condensing the schedule as opposed to saying, oh, we don't want to, it's not a reward to give a team a bye to the next round. That is inherently a reward. You just need to set your calendar in a way to allow that to be a reward. It was a reward for the Broncos and the Seahawks this past week.
Correct.
Had they had to wait another 15 days to play their game, it would not have been.
I agree. And I mean, just if you end up including 4 more teams, the teams that would have been in this year, obviously Notre Dame, but it would have been Vanderbilt, Texas, Utah, and then I believe, well, let's see which one. I'm looking at the wrong one. It would have been Texas, Vanderbilt, Utah, USC would have been out, JMU would have been in. And again, do we think Texas would have made a run or Vandy would have made a run? I don't know. I probably not, but I'd rather see that and have if you have 16 teams, you could crown a champ in 4 weeks. And so as soon as the championship weekend is over, I think you should start your playoff games. And if you go to 16 and you go through 4 weeks, you're not going to have any buys. I'm fine with that. I do think there is an inherent benefit of earning that bye if you condense the postseason schedule like we talked about. But I think college football needs to own New Year's Day. They need to have that as their
Should
own.
be the semis. To me, it should be the semis. Own that day, a doubleheader, because the excitement and enthusiasm for Michigan Washington was still there because we weren't waiting until the end. Next year's national championship game is January 25th.
I know. And to me, that signifies they're ready for the 16 teams because they want to continue to spread it out. They want to put another week in. I don't know if any of those teams are going to get buys. I don't know what it looks like. But to me, that's exactly what that when you see that date set for January 25, that's what it signifies to me, is that they're going to 16, and God forbid they go to 24, because if you start going down the list of 24 teams, Arizona, Michigan, Virginia, Houston, Georgia Tech, like these, Iowa,
we can all be honest here.
they don't belong.
This Michigan team, I think that's a great way to put it. If you in your heart of hearts think that Michigan this past season should have played in a 2014 playoff, then more power to you. There's no reason that Michigan should have been playing for a national championship. They didn't earn it. And I say that because they earned the right to only have to win 2 games in 21, 22, and 23 because they showed enough over the course of the season. And in those seasons, they would have had to have won 3 because they would have gotten a bye. Mm-hmm. I'm okay with 3. But if you are talking to me about, or that USC team that Michigan played and lost to, that team has no business playing for a national championship.
It's I mean, the way it's going, obviously, if it just they want to follow the money, more games, more broadcasts, more money. And you're always going to have top 25 matchups because those are the teams. But I agree with you.
There's a law of diminishing returns in that if you do that, yes, there are some other tangential games that are interesting, but they probably are more. Remember week 18 of the NFL? It's almost more like Saints Falcons to see if the Panthers or the Bucks get into the playoffs than it is top marquee battle.
Yeah, I agree. And I think 12 is good, and I just want to see them condense the schedule to where, and I understand your thought on having 2 games on New Year's Day, the semifinals. I just think that's where the national championship game should be. I think they should play it in the Rose Bowl and move on, because we're last night, there's a lot of college football fans that they were into it, but they weren't really into it because it's been so long since the college football regular season is the end of November. And now it's mid-January. It's 7 weeks later. Next year, it's going to be 8 weeks later.
The NFL is the best at making every juncture of their calendar pop in some way, shape, or form. And I think part of it is just how popular it is, but part of it is the logic of how it goes. There aren't roster changes during their playoffs. There are some coaching things, but I think they've actually improved that aspect where you can't interview in person until your team's out or if there's a bye or something like that. Like, that's great.
The bye you can, yeah. Yep. And that was the whole, everybody got mad at Ben Johnson last year.
Sure. Tough one for them. That's a shame. Doug saying start the season August 1st and January 1st. I think you talked about it a little bit. If you move up week 1 to week 0,
yeah,
that would give you a chance to play the conference championship games. Personally, what I'd rather see them adopt a champion week like the Big Ten did during and just have 8 conference games. Then you have your 9th. So you have a Big Ten championship game for the top 2, and then you can do your little 3 versus 4, 5 versus 6 to try to bolster at-large capabilities. And then you stagger it that way. And, whatever that looks like, I'm not sure exactly. It'll depend on the calendar. But I'm all for a New Year's Day, whether it's Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl, or Peach Bowl. I don't care. The Rose Bowl is nice on New Year's Day. That's fine. But if that's the sacrifice I have to make in order to move it up and have it make more sense, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, get rid of week 0. I've never really understood that, and just make that week 1. And we always used to play. I mean, when I played, it was the Ohio State game was the week before Thanksgiving. And then now that we all have championship games, play those the weekend of Thanksgiving and then move right into your playoff scenarios.
Yep. Here's quite a question. Then I want to briefly talk basketball. We got to get out of here soon. Mark saying the 26 O-line group has a higher ceiling than the 22 Joe Moore award-winning group.
I would agree with that.
Really?
Well, especially with, I think you've got better athletic ability at the tackle position. Now, you may not be as good in the middle, although I think Jake Guarnera at the center position is going to be a dominant player. So it really depends on, the makeup of those five, but you had so many players, when you talk about Andrew Sprague, Blake Frazier, Jake Guarnera getting quality time and that experience, and then you throw in Andrew Babalola. The wild card is going to be Andrew Babalola because when he is healthy enough to go, he missed some very critical developmental time. What does that look like? Where does he fit in? And it may be at tackle, maybe it's at guard. Because you have really good athletes. Maybe it's Blake Frazier that moves in, or it's a Sprague that moves in. And Evan Link, we talked about him moving into guard. And so I think there is a potential that this could be a very good team. But I might back that up 1 year instead of saying the 26 team. I might say the 27 offensive line could be an absolutely dominant bunch.
I'm with you there. Because I fully buy in on Babalola, seeing what they did, but it's probably going to take a little bit of time. And the original's right here. The key will be Babs taking a step forward.
And when I talk about moving one of those guys to guard, everybody always raises an eyebrow. Oh, how could you put Blake Frazier at guard, or how could you put Babalola at guard? Well, my redshirt year, John Runyon was a guard. And obviously, he had a tremendous career as a tackle. We all remember him as an offensive tackle. But there are sometimes when we hear coaches talk about, hey, we just want to find what the best five are, and then let's put them in there. You may have a tackle that's playing guard. I'll take that. Those guys, I'm not saying this because I was a former tackle, but they're just better athletes. So I would love to have 5 tackles up front or 4 of them, and you got Guarnera at center.
Yeah, that was my question. Do you feel as good about Guarnera at center as you did Oluwatimi in 2022?
Oh, yeah. I really think he is going to be a dominant center. I love the fact that he had a chance to show that in the game. I hated that Kripp had to miss it with the injury, but that Guarnera had a chance to move into center, and he had the experience of playing the guard position. So he wasn't coming in cold. He just moved in, and now all of a sudden, I just think he is a body type, a mentality that is built to play the center position.
All right. A couple more just on the playoff aspect. NFL isn't worried about the NCAA schedule anymore. College has to work around the main goal. Agreed to an extent. College football needs to work with the NFL. They need to work together on this. If you're going to make the college football a little more NFL-esque, you need to find ways. There are ways to be mutually beneficial here. And I don't know what that looks like, and that's for a longer conversation. But Pushback saying, I was paying attention to NFL playoffs. Totally forgot about the Natty hadn't been played. Yeah, I think there were some sports fans, probably not a lot of them who are locked in on a noon stream about college football and Michigan football, but there are fans like that 100%. And frankly, some of the topics of conversation leading into a Monday, I'd rather them play it late last week because a lot of the talking heads are discussing the NFL playoffs because it just happened. Michigan basketball tonight, Indiana coming to town. Excited for this one. I think it's an opportunity for Michigan to kind of bounce back a little bit because I think it's crazy, John, when you've got 2 10-point wins on the road and you're like, boy, I don't know if they played all
I was going to ask you that question. Are they slumping?
Yes. I do think they are. Where I think the big area of question is in November and early December, they were taking these early leads and then just stomping on the necks of these opponents. That hasn't quite happened. I mean, they had an early lead against Washington. Huskies hung around. They had an early lead, double digits at Oregon. and then they were down at halftime. Now that 7-8 minute stretch might have been the worst that Michigan's played in quite some time. I think what this past road trip showed me is that for as talented as Yaxel Lendeborg is, and he's a little bit banged up, and that's definitely impacting it. But I think that maybe the true key to this season, what this team's upside, maybe their ceiling and floor, is Morez Johnson Jr. What that dude can do, how he impacts games, what he allows Michigan to do around him. A bunch of guys have to be important. Will Cheddar's the ninth man, and he was probably the biggest reason that Michigan won that game at Oregon. But Rez, on the court, off the court, offense, defense, he has his fingerprints on more than anybody else on this roster that I see right now, with obviously the ability to kind of be fluctuating on that.
Yeah, one of the things I love about watching this team is when you turn it on, and it was a little bit boring for a while because it was 40-point blowouts, but it's who's going to be the guy tonight? Who's going to be the guy the next time Michigan takes the floor? And that's where I'm really excited, because if you're going to make a run, you never know. If Lendeborg gets dinged up in the first round of March, then who is going to be the other guy that steps up? You're going to have a very deep roster, a talented roster, an experienced roster to make that run at a national championship. And I think Michigan is better positioned once they get back to playing with a better rhythm, and the stars are doing what they're supposed to be doing, of having that ability to go deeper in their bench than anybody else can.
D Original saying weakness is knocking down perimeter shots. If they're falling, they can beat any team. Yax has been in an offensive struggle. Trey McKinney has been in an offensive struggle. So right now I agree. But if you look back to when Michigan was dominating teams, what they were doing outside of Wisconsin, where Michigan didn't play great and Wisconsin hit a bunch of threes and guys who you wouldn't expect. Alexis Bielyauskas for Wisconsin had hit 8 threes all season. He hit 5 against Michigan and 3 in a row to start the second half. Again, not trying to make excuses, just playing this out. That can happen in one game sample size. The reason why Michigan was winning those games was because of their 2-point work. The reason why they were blowing teams out was the 3. Yeah. When you're facing better teams, you need to hit shots from outside. You need shots from everywhere. But that's the ceiling case for this team. The fact that they're still first nationally in 2-point field goal offense and defense from a percentage standpoint, I got a good feeling about it. So
I want to ask you a question that has nothing to do with winning or losing games, but the floor in Oregon. Watch that game on TV, and it was offensive to the optic nerve. Was it as offensive in person?
So we were on the floor, and it's not nearly as distracting. We were there the two years prior, and it's a new floor design. The trees were much darker. It was almost like a nighttime setting. That was terrible. This was a lot more reasonable there.
It's like trying to watch a game against Boise State's playing in with the blue turf.
So I will say I've been to the blue turf. The blue turf is way more distracting at field court level than the Oregon court. The blue turf was it. You can't look away, man. That was 2011 famous Idaho Potato Bowl. I was there, and boy, that was distracting as hell.
Yeah, you and all the seagulls.
That's right. Yeah, it was great.
Mm-hmm.
Our guy Mizzle Mar here, we appreciate him. Yax hasn't been nearly aggressive enough the past 3 games. I do think that's injury related. I expect him to get there at some point, as the original mentions. And we'll go here. John, you him.
Nailed it. I am.
Congratulations. All right. Any final thoughts, John?
From him or from me? I'm not sure who we're talking about now.
Isn't that the same person?
Yeah, but I'm excited to see and get a chance to sit down and talk to some of the assistant coaches, just so I can get a chance to know them and share that with the Michigan fans. It's going to be some tough conversations, not just because they are inheriting a roster, and until they see them, I'm not going to sit there and say, hey, rank your safeties, rank your corners, rank your offensive linemen. They're still getting to know these guys, but I am interested to get to know some of their philosophies, some of their temperament, some of their philosophies in regards to, coaching and putting together. When we talk to Coach Harding? What's it look like? How do you put together an offensive line that has some experience, but you've got to continue to develop that experience?
We will be here most Tuesdays throughout the course of the offseason. We'll have a few interview-only, audio-only episodes on In the Trenches, but excited to delve into it. We'll talk NFL draft. We'll talk the offseason editions. We will talk more about the college football playoff, and we will talk with all of you as we continue. For Jon, I'm Brian. We'll talk to you tonight on the radio for Michigan and Indiana, and then afterward here on YouTube.